Contrary, no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. We now come to the next bill.
Bill, second reading.
Anna Firth.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Britain is a nation of animal lovers. Our pets are part of our family. They comfort us when we're down. They give us huge laughter, energy and joy when we're up, and in fact all of the time. They make a house a home, which is why it is so heartbreaking when any one of our beloved pets is snatched away from us. And it's also why the taking, abducting or detaining someone else's beloved pet is such a sick and cruel crime. Madam Deputy Speaker, I would be devastated if my own lovely Cavapuchon Lottie, who I might add was robbed at the Westminster Dog Show this year, but she'll be back next year going for the full prize. But I would be devastated if Lottie or my two cats, Merlin or Marmalade, were abducted. And I know that my esteemed predecessor, Sir David Amis, felt exactly the same about his beloved pugs, Lily and Beau. Indeed, if I could just pause just for a moment and remember Sir David, who was the national champion of pets. The last debate we had in this House on pet reform, Sir David not only chaired that debate, but he spoke in it as well in Westminster Hall. So I clearly have a few tricks still to learn, Madam Deputy Speaker. So it's always a privilege to build on his legacy, and I have chosen to stand in this place in the hope that a few members might just look behind me, and let's hope his light remains as we discuss this bill. Madam Deputy Speaker, in my own constituency of Leigh-on-Sea, the wonderful Anne Cushion co-founded a social enterprise known as Tilly's Angels alongside Helen Leader. And Tilly's Angels unites owners with lost dogs and cats. And it was started in 2016. It's grown enormously. Anne and Helen now have a team of 18 dedicated volunteers, and their Facebook page is followed by nearly 27,000 people in the SS Southend area. And I'm very proud that we have 7 Tilly's Angels with us today in the public gallery listening to this debate, because in September of 2021, only a few months before I was elected, Anne was volunteering, helping to locate other people's missing dogs and cats, when she went on a flyby visit to her sister. And on returning to her van, the van door was open and all 4 of her beautiful rescue dogs were gone. Mandy, Mickey, Ruby and Cara. And she still remembers the sinking, sickening feeling of seeing those 4 empty dog crates. She described it to me as being her babies had been taken. The pain, she said, was indescribable. And of course it's incredibly ironic given the good work that she had already been doing for many years to help others in the same situation. Luckily, because of Tilly's Angels, within an hour, 20 people were out looking. Within days, an army of volunteers had swung into action, and her dogs were actually recovered in dribs and drabs. But of course that is not the happy story for the vast majority. You know, the data shows that only 12% of stolen pets actually find their way back to owners. The vast majority, 88%, that is over 2,000 dogs and cats every year, are not recovered, devastating those families and owners. Now, cat theft, which is included in my bill, is just as harrowing. Helen from Tilly's Angels told me of a lady who went into Colchester Hospital for cancer treatment, leaving her 4 cats in the care of a neighbour, only to find on leaving hospital that not only had the lady moved, she had taken her 4 cats with her and left no forwarding address or contact details. Incredibly, it's unbelievable, isn't it? Incredibly, 2 of those cats later reappeared in Leigh-on-Sea. Of course I'll give way.
I support this bill, especially in memory of my dear friend David Amis, but I've just got one thing that slightly worries me. Cats are, I'm a dog owner, but cats are prone to wander. That's why we love them. And there are these sort of sometimes very kindly old ladies who see a wandering cat and they pick them up, they take them home, they feel they're looking after them. So I just want my honourable friend to assure me that there won't be sort of innocent ladies who pick up cats who would now be enmeshed in the law. Oh, gents, yeah.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his intervention and for making a very, very important point. And I'm going to come on and explain why the 2 offences are slightly different. Why the offence of dog abduction is the taking and detaining of a dog, but where a cat is concerned, it's only the taking which is criminalised, not the detaining, because cats roam, because the behaviour of the 2 animals is different, and there's also a defence of reasonable excuse. We do not seek to over-criminalise the good behaviour and good intentions of old ladies and many other people. I can see other members. Of course I'll give way.
I thank you for giving way. I am hugely supportive of this. The pain, the upset, the grief of losing a pet in these circumstances is terrible and has been very well illustrated. On the subject of cats, not every cat is a roaming cat. There are some very beautiful, indeed I might say the most special breeds of the cat, such as the ragdoll, that blesses my own household, that does not roam. It is an indoor cat. So I'd be grateful if she could give assurances that actually the indoor nature of some cats, which is very similar to that of a dog, is being taken adequately into account in her bill.
It is absolutely being... I thank my honourable friend for her intervention and for raising that very important point. There is no discriminating between cats and dogs when it comes to the penalty. They are both being treated equally. It is just the way the offences are framed which is different. But I absolutely take her point, and I'm going to come on to illustrate that, I hope, in more detail. But if I could just complete the story. 2 cats reappeared. 1 sadly reappeared dead on the road, and the other 2 are still unaccounted for. These tales abound wherever you go. And Debbie Matthews, the daughter of the late, great Sir Bruce Forsyth, the only host, in my opinion, of the Generation game.
Didn't he do well?
And didn't he do well?
Yeah.
And the
keep dancing.
we digress. She also founded SAMPA, the Stolen and Missing Pets Alliance, and had a very similar experience when her 2 dogs were stolen from a supermarket. As did Tony Clark, who founded Pet Theft Awareness after her Siamese cat, a very beautiful cat called Clooney, was stolen. And the common thread that runs through all of these stories is that the police response was practically non-existent. In Debbie's case, the police told her there was no point coming because nothing of value had been stolen from her car. And Helen, who reported the incident of the cats that I was telling you about, was told by the police do not even consider a cat a possession. Now, of course, this varies, and that is one of the problems and one of the things that my bill is seeking to address across police forces. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, that is simply not right, and it has to change, and with this bill, it will. Madam Deputy Speaker, one of the reasons that this legislation is so important is because of the sheer scale now of these offences. According to Direct Line, between 2018 and 2022, there were more than 12,000 dog thefts, an average of 2,400 a year, the equivalent of 7 dogs being stolen every single day. Now, these figures are not complete, because we know that all forces do not even register these offences. And cat theft, which has already been mentioned, is now catching up. The Pet Awareness found that in 2021, the police recorded that cats being stolen had jumped by 40% to an all-time high of 560 cats. Cat theft has quadrupled since 2015, and data from the Metropolitan Police shows that cat theft as a proportion of the total of pet theft crimes has risen from 6% in 2012 to 31% last year. So cat theft is very much on the rise, and I'm sure that that is very much connected with these beautiful breeds of cats that some people have. And one can only imagine the distress and anguish if you have a Siamese cat, a ragdoll cat, one of these beautiful breeds that you have inside, and they are snatched away from you. Not that I am in any way diminishing the impact that it would have on me of Merlin and Marmalade, who are just normal old moggies. They are immeasurably valuable in my eyes. Yeah. But I don't want to go any further without saying a huge thank you to some people who've done a lot of work over many, many years on this bill. Dr. Daniel Allen, an animal geographer from Keele University, and also Debbie Matthews, who I've already referred to, both campaigned for 10 years to get this far, and the Conservative Foundation for Animal Welfare, so ably led by Lorraine and Chris Platt, have also done tremendous work, and I'm glad that we have them here with us today. I'd also like to pay tribute to my right honourable and honourable friends, the member for Chingford, right honourable member for Chingford and Woodford, the right honourable member for Witham, honourable member for Stroud, Dartford and Ipswich, for all their work in this area over many years. In particular, my right honourable and learned friend, the member for South Swindon, the former Lord Chancellor and Secretary of State, who was so instrumental in forming and leading the Pet Task Force, and whose ingenious idea it was to move away from the more difficult to prove offence of pet theft and to the more appropriate offence of pet abduction. Public interest intensified during the pandemic, when, of course, breeders couldn't breed dogs, but the demand for puppies and companionship soared, and we had a paradise for callous criminals that wanted to steal other people's pets. And it was that perfect storm of callous criminality that led to a spike in particular in dog theft that led to the launch of the cross-government Pet Theft Task Force in May 2021. And I think it's very important to stress that this is a political issue, but I hope not a party political issue. This is a bill which has huge support, for which I'm very grateful, from right across the House. That task force gathered evidence to understand the factors that contributed both to the perceived and the real rise in pet theft. It heard concerns about the price of the UK's most sought-after dog breeds that had grown significantly during the first lockdown. According to the Dogs Trust, the price of some breeds rose by almost 90%. Google searches for buy a puppy increased by over 160% in the months between March and August, as everyone scrambled to buy their pandemic puppies. This led a number of sources, including animal welfare charities and experts, to suggest that it's those price increases that almost certainly triggered that rise in pet thefts. The findings of the Pet Theft Task Force showed that the emotional impact of having a pet stolen is high. Not knowing what happened to your pet or where they are now is an agonising situation to be in, and one which all pet owners in the chamber today will surely sympathise with. And of course, that emotional impact doesn't stop with the owners. The pets, too, can suffer from being taken away from their owners and being thrust into an unfamiliar environment. There's also a very high level of fear surrounding the victims of pet abduction. In fact, that was aptly demonstrated to me last night when I took part in an hour-long phone-in on Ian Dale's show LBC to talk about this bill. And Ian Dale himself, who everyone who knows anything about Ian Dale and LBC knows what a massive dog lover he is. And he has a walled courtyard at his house in which his two dogs, Woody and Dude, are allowed to go out. And the courtyard has a gate, so Woody and Dude are safe in the courtyard, but he is still worried and fearful, what if somebody else got in? And that was reflected by many of the calls. So this is still a real issue. Of course I'll give way.
I support this bill. I think it's a good bill, but my concern in respect of this area is there is an offence on the statute book which covers this type of criminal behaviour. I do not believe it is the fact of how difficult it is to prove that is causing the problem here. I think it's the lack of police taking the allegation seriously and the investigation into it. So how does the new offence impact upon police, the police response and their hopefully changing response, taking this seriously? Will the new offence, do you think, achieve that?
Well, I thank my learned friend for his intervention, and I share his interest in that area. And of course, these are questions which I have asked myself, and I think the answer is twofold. Firstly, by having this separate offence, the police will have to assign a unique identifier to this offence. We will finally be able to see the scale of the offence, and we'll also be able to see the police forces which are taking this seriously and enforcing it. Because of course it wouldn't be logical to suddenly find that pet theft is happening in only one or two counties and not in others. A degree might vary, but of course the offence is happening all over the country. So making it compulsory effectively for the police to assign a unique identifier in itself will lead to greater enforcement. And the other point, which he doesn't directly touch on, of course, is the sentencing of this offence. And you know, he will know that there have been many attempts to try and strengthen the sentencing guidelines, but he will know as a lawyer himself about the separation of powers, and that's not a role for this place. But by having a separate offence, there will be separate sentencing guidelines. So I hope that assures him that that's... Yes.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for giving way. I strongly support this bill. I'm hoping to catch Madam Deputy Speaker's eye a little later. But on this point about the obligations and the legalities, I'm brought to mind particularly of a good friend of mine whose dog strayed on Hampstead Heath, was picked up by somebody, tied on a railing with a piece of string and then stolen. Could she and or the Minister perhaps later remind the House what the obligations are at the moment in terms of differential obligations between dogs and cats, and if one finds a dog or a cat, what one is actually bound in law at the moment and under this bill to do in terms of everyone's responsibilities?
Yes, I mean, my honourable friend raises a very important and interesting point, which we could debate and discuss, because there are obligations, as he knows, already on the statute book, and I will come on to deal with some of the points that he has raised in a moment. I want to turn next to the purposes of the bill. The golden thread running through this bill is that dogs and cats are sentient beings. They are not mere property. Animals and humans can and do form emotional bonds, and there is a devastating impact when animal abduction takes place, both on people and on pets. And it is that which needs to be properly reflected in our criminal law. Honourable members will know that the theft of a cat or a dog is already a crime under the Theft Act 1968 and the Theft Act Northern Ireland 1969, but under those acts the sentience and intrinsic value of animals is not recognised. So currently a stolen rescue Labrador is treated as no different from the theft of a power tool, a mobile phone or a computer when it comes to sentencing. Indeed, probably lesser, since computers and smartphones are often of high value, and it is that financial value which runs through the Theft Act. Pets, of course, we know, are not mere property, and we've had many examples of that already. So this bill, Madam Deputy Speaker, will create two specific offences of cat abduction and dog abduction in England and in Northern Ireland. So if a pet is abducted, it is not treated in the same way as the theft of a watch or a mobile home or a power tool, all of which can be easily replaced. They might be worth a lot of money. It might be inconvenient replacing them, but the item itself is not affected by the crime, whereas a pet is. So the bill is recognising that pets are family, they are not property, and the trauma suffered by both the owner and the pet when the pet is taken or abducted is very significant. And it is the intention of the bill to allow the courts to consider this impact on both the owner and the welfare of the animal when deciding on penalty. Coming back to the issue of the unique identifier, the second issue the bill will address is that pet theft and abduction does not currently have a unique identifier in crime data sets. That's why it's so very difficult to identify the numbers of pets that are actually stolen every year, because it's impossible to distinguish in many police records between the theft of an inanimate object and the theft of an animal. And of course some dogs and cats will be taken as part of a burglary or a robbery, so the fact that an animal's been involved won't be mentioned at all in the police records. And in preparing for this second reading today, I issued freedom of information requests to all 45 territorial police forces in the UK, asking for the number of pets stolen each year since 2019. The responses I received articulate the problem that we currently face perfectly. As of this morning, I had responses from 30 of the police forces, but 12 of those 30 told me they were unable to provide the information requested as their records do not distinguish theft of pets from general theft of objects. So that means I've only been able to compile for myself the covered areas making up around 29% of the population of the UK. By introducing this unique identifier, we will help the recording of the crime and see the true extent of it. So the offences themselves, will be an offence of taking a cat or a dog, but also the detaining of a dog. Cats and dogs are the most commonly kept pets in our country. It's now estimated that we have over a quarter of all adults either owning one or both of those pets. So it seemed to me the appropriate place to start is with dogs and cats. But the species are different and they're treated differently in this bill. The detaining offence, which we've already talked about, does not apply to cats, as they generally have more freedom to roam without their owners. And the bill is not intended to punish incidents where there has been no malice or ill intent for looking after a cat that has voluntarily come to another person's home. Many of us will have read the children's book, Six Dinner Sid, in which Sid the cat has his dinner at 6 different houses on the same street.
I'm sorry, could I ask another?
Of course.
This is a really important point. I'm just thinking of my wife's grandmother, who in our family was known as Granny Meow, because she had 14 cats. And every single cat, she had gone out and she thought that they hadn't arrived in her home, she had gone on and picked them up. So I want to because she thought they were stray. She was a completely innocent old lady, and no question of stealing anything. I just want to be absolutely sure that in no way could anybody knock on, policeman Plod can't knock on her door, as long as she's dead, of course, or couldn't have knocked on her door and taken her to court. I want to be absolutely sure of that, because I think it's important that people have this reassurance.
Yeah, I thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I can absolutely assure my honourable friend that it is specifically stated in the bill itself that it is a defence where you are picking up stray animals, or if you are involving yourself with someone else's animal, but for good and honourable and noble reasons. Of course, I'll give way.
I thank the Honourable Lady for giving way. This is a really important, for a lot of people, piece of legislation, and doesn't the lesson of Six Dinner Sid and Granny Meow for both, because of course at the end of Six Dinner Sid, Sid also went to the vet 6 times, which wasn't what he was looking to do, mean that we really want to encourage people to get their pets chipped so that any confusion about ownership can be resolved, and that's the same for cats as well as dogs.
I thank my honourable, the honourable member for her excellent point, and in fact I see another excellent private member's bill further down on the list today. She's absolutely right. We do not seek to criminalise anyone who looks after Sid or George or any other stray cat. The bill does, however, include an enabling power to extend the offences to other species of animals commonly kept as pets. So if there's evidence of a significant number or a rise in cases of unlawful taking, the government will be able to react in a dynamic way. And I was very struck last night on the radio by the number of people who phoned in to talk about birds. In particular birds of prey being stolen. So that may well be an area that we look at in the future. We've heard concerns about good behaviour not being criminalised. And I do want to assure members that while the bill proposes offences meant to punish those who purposefully abduct a pet, it also creates exemptions for certain connected persons and subject to certain defences, such as reasonable excuse for taking or detaining an animal. So, for example, and we've already heard of some, the offence will not apply in situations where a couple have got a cat or a dog whilst living together. They then have a disagreement about the ownership of the pet, and they then go their separate ways. So that could include someone who is fleeing an abusive relationship, taking their valued pet with them. And that's a point which Refuge have specifically raised and are very happy to see is exempted in this bill. Of course I'll give way.
I'm really grateful to her, and I will congratulate her again when I stand to make my remarks about this bill. I think she's raising some such valuable points about the different circumstances we're going to see as a result of this bill. And because it does encompass wider breeds than dogs and cats now potentially in the future, does she feel that we may need to see a widening of microchipping to encompass those pets, because it's going to be very difficult to prove ownership of animals that aren't microchipped if they don't have distinguishing features?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank my honourable friend for an absolutely excellent point. I mean, the logic of that is irrefutable, and I agree with it wholeheartedly.
Would you friendly word?
Yes, of course.
Please forgive me for the lawyer in me is coming out here, but the word lawful control, does that mean ownership? Or the words lawful control?
Yes, I think a person is always a controller.
I'm almost certain it does. I will have to refer to my notes to be absolutely precise. Perhaps I could come back to him on that. It extends wider, of course, than ownership, lawful control. It's designed to encompass a vet or a dog sitter, or somebody else who has a role in relation to the animal in question. So I hope that helps him. I think there are many honourable members and friends in the Chamber who I hope will volunteer to be on the Bill Committee. Indeed, I consider that they almost have volunteered. So, as I've already mentioned, we don't seek, and this is so important, we do not seek to over-criminalise well-meaning behaviour. The situation in relation to stray dogs, where people have simply meant to provide shelter to an animal for a reasonable period of time if they believe it to be without a home, that will not be caught by this bill. In Northern Ireland, this would be applicable to a person finding an unaccompanied dog. Most importantly, the bill will introduce a new offence whereby if someone is found guilty of dog or cat abduction, the offender will be liable to a fine and up to a maximum of 5 years in prison. The maximum term of imprisonment is comparable with provisions for animal welfare offences under the Animal Welfare Act 2006 and the Welfare of Animals Act Northern Ireland 2011. So this will lay a marker for these types of offences. One, that the abduction of our beloved pets will not be tolerated. Any distress cause should be taken into account, and it would also give the opportunity for monitoring. Of course, I'll give way again.
I'm grateful for her giving way again to me on this. Just again, if I may, just to reflect on the nature of cats, particularly the enormously precious indoor cat breeds. In relation to the sentencing provisions, how will the distress to the animal be demonstrated to the court? Does my honourable friend consider that there might be a victim witness statement from the owner or usual keeper, a vet making a statement? In what way does she consider that the distress may be evidenced adequately to the court?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My honourable friend's making an excellent point. I can't be prescriptive today about how that will be demonstrated, but I can give her an assurance there would have to be evidence. The court couldn't take distress into account without some reasonable evidence. Sometimes that evidence will be self-evident. Sometimes that evidence will be provided by owners, by passers-by. I'm not suggesting it would have to be expert evidence, but clearly there should be some evidence for the court to look at. Finally, before I conclude, I would just like to pay tribute again to all those organisations that have been involved with getting us to this stage. I've mentioned the Conservative Animal Welfare Foundation, but I'd also like to mention the Cats Protection, the Dogs Trust, Battersea Cats and Dogs Home, Refuge, Ian Dale and LBC, and of course Southend's own Tilly's Angels for all their invaluable support and engagement with this bill. So to conclude, Madam Deputy Speaker, if this bill is enacted, we will have better protections for our pets. We will have offences that duly recognise that they are sentient beings. We will be able to better record and track pet abduction. We will have a better deterrent, and I hope we will see a greater prosecution rate than 1%, which is what it is at the moment. Pets are valuable and much-loved members of our family. They ask little of us in return for their love and loyalty, other than that we keep them, except in the case of some cats, other than that we keep them safe. They deserve our support and protection, and I'd like to thank members on both sides of the House for their support today.
The question is that the bill be now read a second time. Lynn Brown.
Grateful, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I say, first of all, that my dog is truly the most amazing, small, loving creature in the entire universe, and I won't be challenged on that in this chamber. And can I also say that she too was robbed at the Westminster Dog of the Year show. I mean, we had ensured that she had won the online poll by a zillion votes, and then Mr. Speaker managed to pick up the prize, and Cara was completely and utterly ignored. Can I say that I then promised Cara that I would never, ever put her through such an outrageously unfair test of her beauty and her amazingness again. I can, and can I just go on from that and say that she is truly a member of our family. She's a member of our whole family. She is amazing with constituents. She comes to my surgery. If a constituent is upset, she gets off the chair, waddles over, and sits there to be stroked. And in fact, she's got me in trouble with constituents more than once when she has recognised a constituent in the street who I have seen before, gone over, said hello, and I have said to the woman, I'm so sorry. She's very friendly. She said, yes, we met 2 weeks ago. She clearly remembers me.
Thank her. It is wonderful to hear about her dog, and I enjoyed meeting her at Westminster Dog of the Year. I think in the interests of today's debate and in cross-party unity I think we have on this issue, I think it is important to realise that best dog in the world or best cat in the world, many things could also be the best together. So each member's pet, I think, could fulfil the role that she describes.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure that Cara would agree with that either. So I'm hesitant to agree with the Honourable Lady, but I do take her point. She is truly a member of our family, and the entire family would be absolutely devastated if somebody was to take her from me. We would, to be honest, I would go to pieces, I think. Sadly, a number of my constituents, particularly through the period of lockdown, were contacting me about dog thefts, and the fear of it and the actuality of it. And those constituents didn't, sadly, get their animals back at all. I know that there was a big market out there during the lockdown period, and sadly, now because of the cost of living crisis, and I make no political point about this, but we are seeing many more dogs who are landing at the Dogs Trust and at Battersea Dogs Home because people are no longer able to afford to feed them. But to address this bill, I'm not going to keep the House long, but I did want to speak here on behalf of Kim, who has a disability, who absolutely adores her dogs, but she tells me she no longer feels safe taking them out. She doesn't feel that she would be able to defend them should somebody come and try to take them from her. And she was particularly impacted after a friend of hers, who was 84 years of age, had her terrier snatched from her while she was out on a walk. I know how terrifying that must have been, and just how emotionally devastating that must have been, because it would be like witnessing an assault or a kidnap of a member of your family. And you know, such an emotional support for somebody of that age, it would have been just absolutely horrific. And I know this is no different also to cat owners, and I am genuinely very pleased that this bill recognises the need to protect cats in just the same way. I know that there is clearly very broad agreement that closer legal clarity and strength is needed on this area of law so that our closest animal companions aren't treated as property, and that our relationship with them as a society is reflected in law. And I just think that this bill has been a long time coming, and I am genuinely very grateful to the Honourable Lady for bringing it forward. I'm not going to delay the passage of this bill for this long-awaited bill, so I'm going to leave it there, but just to say how delighted I was to see this and how pleased I am to have been able to speak in favour of it today.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. It's a pleasure to follow the Honourable Lady who spoke with passion about her devoted pet. And I think her story will be repeated millions of times across our country, bearing in mind our reputation for, and I think in the main, our justly held reputation for being a nation of animal lovers. I'll come on to some of the exceptions that we all know about in a moment. If it's true that pets take on the characteristics of the people who look after them, then in the case of the cat who lives in my house, and I put it in that way rather than my cat, I would say that her propensity to being demanding and voluble may well bear some similarities to me. I leave it at that for the house to draw its own conclusions. But our cat, who's of course a cat protection cat, the second one that we've had in our family, both from Cats Protection, and I pay tribute to that wonderful organisation. You need never buy a cat in this country. There are thousands, tens of thousands of deserving cats who need a home, and charities like Cats Protection provide a wonderful source of cats that need love and need a home. Our cat, Mrs. Landingham, who of course devoted to the West Wing will know was a great character, the President's Secretary in the first 2 seasons of that wonderful drama, has been with us now for several years. And as I say, the relationship between cats and their families can be a complex one, and ours is no exception at all. But she is well loved by, in particular, my daughter, who really enjoys her company. So that's another story to add to the millions of others who the prospect of losing their pet would be one of real trauma. And we know the cases of trauma that exist. And therefore, it was some years ago, back in 2021, when I was in office as Justice Secretary, that I, together with my Right Honourable friends, the member for Witham, who was then the Home Secretary, and the member for Camborne and Redruth, and then DEFRA Secretary, we set up the Pet Theft Task Force. It was a task force that consisted not just of officials from our 3 respective departments, but also 2 police and crime commissioners, Katie Bourne, the Sussex Police and Crime Commissioner, and Chris Nelson, the Gloucestershire Police and Crime Commissioner, and indeed police leads and representatives of the CPS, animal welfare groups, and taking evidence from a wealth of organisations such as the RSPCA, the Dogs Trust, the Kennel Club, and indeed the Sentencing Council itself, bearing in mind the need to consider the interrelationship between any sentencing regime and sentencing for existing offences. Now, it had been put at the time very strongly that we have the law of theft to cover the taking of animals and pets. And that, quite rightly, many lawyers said, well, what on earth are we doing? We don't need another law, another layer of complexity for prosecutors and police to consider. But then, it became abundantly clear that the treatment of animals as chattels or goods or property just doesn't meet the way in which society regards our pets. They're sentient beings, they're sentient creatures. They're therefore much more than mere property. And therefore, the definitions within the Theft Act, I think, start to become strained to breaking point. And more than that, the Theft Act obviously requires a test of dishonesty. The dishonest appropriation of property belonging to another with the intention of permanently depriving that person of it. Now, all those elements have to be proved in order to prove theft. So it's not just dishonesty, but an intention to permanently deprive. And herein comes, I think, the obvious line, which many perpetrators would deploy, which is, well, I wasn't intending to take this animal. I was taking it in for its welfare. I wasn't going to permanently keep it. And I think that, therefore, you can see already, Mr. Deputy Speaker, some of the evidential challenges that might present themselves with regard to proving the offence of theft, which is why the analogy with abduction seemed to be a much more sensible one. The law of child abduction has been part of our law for many decades. It was last revised in the 1984 Child Abduction Act. Those of us who are criminal practitioners, I see the member for Bury North here, will be familiar with it. No doubt he's done cases involving child abduction. I certainly have. It's nothing to do with dishonesty, nothing to do with the state of mind, the dishonest state of mind of a person. It's all about the taking of a child from a family situation, sometimes out of the country. The consent of the child, where the child is under a certain age, is immaterial. It's the... Yes?
I'm getting a bit confused now. The whole point about the Theft Act is that you have to prove intent, mens rea. So what happens in the case where somebody takes a cat or a dog and they say, well, this is precisely the point he was making. They say, I thought it was a stray. I was doing it for his welfare. We're not going to have a great court case about the state of mind of this person, are we?
The provisions of this bill is the defence of lawful excuse or reasonable authority. Reasonable excuse or lawful authority. And any sensible analysis of a case, police officer or a prosecutor, will of course bear that very much in mind when weighing up the evidence. And clearly in cases that he envisages, cat lovers, people who are clearly interested in the welfare of animals and pets, are going to be covered by reasonable excuse or lawful authority. What I think we have to acknowledge, sadly, is that contrary to Granny, I nearly called her Granny Pussy, Granny Meow is what I meant. There are, I'm afraid, I'm sure Hansard will deal with that. There are groups out there, particularly with regard to dogs, who are unscrupulous, who are profiting out of the illegal and underground breeding of animals and the passing off of dogs, in particular, as pedigree breeds, when in fact they're nothing of the sort. And indeed, when I was Solicitor General, I had to deal with a case, an unduly lenient sentence reference case to the Court of Appeal relating to a conspiracy involving a veterinarian surgeon. And indeed people who were in effect importing, I think it was greyhounds in this case, from Ireland, who sadly were not pedigree breeds, and then profiting and selling those dogs on. Now, I think that sort of trade is abusive. It involves poor welfare standards. It involves, frankly, the abuse of animals, and it's something that rightly horrifies right-thinking people across our country. Now, anybody who thinks naively that somehow the theft of dogs in particular is an ad hoc thing done on the spur of the moment, I'm afraid that is not the case. There is, I'm afraid, evidence of organised criminality and indeed the taking of animals which are seen to have a value. And that was uncovered during the work of the task force. Now, I think it was within the contemplation of policymakers then, including me, that legislation would be brought forward to criminalise dog abduction with a power within the proposed bill to extend it to other types of animals. Now, I'm glad that we've gone further today, Mr Deputy Speaker, in having a specific offence of cat abduction. Although the prevalence of that type of behaviour is less, it seems, there is no doubt that it does happen, and there are cats of very high value, again, where people can see potential money to be made, and that there are examples of that sadly happening. So rather than waiting to do something, I think it's right that we do take action to protect cats as well. And the provision in the bill to extend this type of offence to other animals is a welcome one. It gives the lawmakers the flexibility, through secondary legislation to do that. And I think keeping it simple is absolutely the way forward. I had in previous iterations, I think we saw elements of this in the Kept Animals Bill that was withdrawn. There had been talk then about bringing in a test of dishonesty. I thought that was a departure, frankly, from the policy intent that we'd set out in the Pet Theft Task Force report, and it was a complication of the situation. And I think sticking to terms such as dog and cat, again, is good sense. There was a temptation, I think, to try and create a general offence about sentient mammals. I just think that was too clever a half, which is why I think this bill should commend itself to the House on the basis that it uses familiar, well-known definitions and keeps things as clear as possible. Now, sentencing levels. Now, in 2021, and my honourable friend, the Minister, of course, will remember the bill, the Animal Welfare Bill, changed dramatically the way in which we dealt with welfare offences. We upped the maximum to 5 years. That was a big moment, I think, in animal welfare law reform. And I think it's right that this offence matches that maximum by way of abduction. I know that's welcomed by Blue Cross, it's certainly welcomed by me. It creates a consistency. Some would say, well, it's 2 years less than the maximum for theft. Well, we're looking at a different regime here, Because what we want sentencers to examine, if and when offences are brought to book and people either plead guilty or are convicted, we don't just want sentencers to look at it from the point of view of the keeper or the owner. We want sentencers to look at it from the point of view of the welfare effect on the animal. The condition that the dog or the cat that has been abducted, has been taken, is in as a result of what has happened to them. And therefore understanding it from a welfare point of view, because there are some horrendous cases where we know that dogs have been taken very badly treated and been returned to their owners in a terrible state. We want that to be reflected in any sentence that is passed by a magistrate's court or indeed a Crown Court. Just reminding myself that we are dealing with, yes, they are either way offences, bearing in mind the maximum of 5 years. They can actually go to the Crown Court for trial or committal to sentence if indeed the magistrates think their powers of sentencing are inadequate. And there will be cases, sadly, where that will happen, where the welfare of the dog or the cat in question has been abused. And that is why it is important, I think, that in developing sentencing guidelines, which the Independent Sentencing Council will, I hope, do as a result of these new offences, the welfare of the animal will be very much a consideration at the heart of the way in which courts should approach the sentencing exercise in these cases. So we're moving away from a rather Victorian view of animals as goods and chattels. It's only right that we do. And I think that in using the term abduction, we are striking the right balance between the need not to complicate the law, but to reflect the reality of how we view our cats and dogs and our much-loved pets, and the effect on their welfare of their unlawful, their criminal taking. And that's why I commend my honourable friend for her work in this area. It's, I should put on record, my honourable friend and I were at bar school together some years ago. I'm not going to say how long, but she is a lawyer of some distinction and experience as well, and a practitioner, former practitioner, and it's particularly appropriate that she brings forward the bill in her name, and I'm delighted to support it wholeheartedly. Progress at last.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It's a genuine pleasure to contribute to this debate and to follow the very comprehensive report by the member for Southend, the passion of the member for West Ham, the expertise of the member for Swindon, and of course, Granny Meow. I should also declare that I've often voted in the Westminster Dog of the Year, obviously voting for everybody's beautiful dog, because if anybody's asking, I've never participated. I still own a rather elderly cat now who I'm afraid probably wouldn't win any awards except from me. And she's not of any particular breed apart from loved. But we recognise that pet ownership is an intrinsic part of many people's lives, and for good reasons. There's lots of evidence that owning a pet can help with stress. Perhaps that's why they should be mandatory in Parliament. I've always thought we should be able to have them in our offices. Maybe that would help some of the conversations. They lower blood pressure, they're good for loneliness. We are a nation, half of us who own a pet. In fact, the quarter of people who own a cat own more than one. So we might have more people owning dogs, but we have more people being owned by multiple cats in many ways, those 6 dinner SIDS. The message, therefore, that this legislation sends is that it's not an insignificant matter, and I think that answers the question from the member for Bury about what was the need for an additional one. One of the reasons why we legislate in this place is to say very clearly, when we are seeing widespread patterns of harm that come from pets being stolen, and we saw an explosion of this during the pandemic, the response that people receive from the police tells us that there's something wrong with the way in which things are being dealt with, and by legislating we're sending a very clear message here that we want that to be different. So this is a long overdue change, and I do pay tribute to the pet task force. One can only imagine what their meetings were like and whether they took place in perhaps the dog or cat cafes around the country. And I think it is right as well the way in which things have been slightly rejigged for cats and dogs, because as Granny Meow, 6 dinner sit, and most of us know, cats are different creatures. Whether they act like their owners or owners become like themselves. But it is more seriously a worry to me that the experience of my constituents who sadly experienced this challenge, and one of the reasons I wanted to speak and support this legislation, has been so difficult with the police, because that doesn't take account of either the emotional impact or, frankly, the financial consequences of this bill. And the very short contribution I want to make today, I just want us to be clear, yes, absolutely, we recognise the emotional distress when somebody's cat or dog is taken, but the trade behind this is also why legislating for this specific offence and addressing that, I think, is very worth doing. In that sense, I just wanted to share with the House some of the experiences of my constituents of this, whether it was the constituent who had a Bengal cat stolen. Now, a Bengal cat can go for up to £5,000 if it's a particular type of breed. There aren't other items under the theft legislation of such value that we would then expect the police to say to people, well, it's a civil matter, sorry about the loss of your cat, we're not going to investigate it, because it is actually a very valuable item, as well as the emotional distress. Another constituent's son's ex-girlfriend, stole their dog. Now, the dog was microchipped, so it was very clearly owned by the family, but the police told her that it was a civil matter, and therefore they would not assist. Again, I just point out that there are other examples of where perhaps you have had those kind of disputes where items have been taken and the police would very clearly recognise something as theft. After all, often it is breaking and entering that is facilitating the seizure and the abduction of a pet. That's partly because some of the breeds that we are talking about are incredibly valuable. If you wanted a Siamese cat, that can be £300-400 to buy. An English bulldog, £2,000 for a puppy. A dachshund, £1,500, and even a cocker spaniel, £300 to £600. It's not therefore a surprise that there is a trade in stealing animals and stealing pets to resell. And that when the police response to simply dismiss this and not even to investigate, what we are doing is giving a green light for that to continue on. So I want to say that I have full support for this piece of legislation, the message that we are sending, the clarity of having a pet abduction piece of legislation, and the importance of then having that data from police forces about the scale of this crime, because as we know with other crimes, data is the start of investigation. If you don't know where these crimes are taking place, you can't then look for the patterns that help you identify the people behind them. I also want to recognise the distress that it does cause. As I say, the constituents who come to me devastated when their pets have been stolen and they feel that nobody else cares. Well, the message we're sending from Parliament today is that we do think somebody should care, and we do think that it is a serious matter. And finally, I also want to join with congratulating all those brilliant voluntary organisations who help us as a nation of pet lovers. The member from Southend talked about Tilly's Angels. We have Waltham Forest for cats and dogs. They are two separate groups. Obviously, sharks and jets, neither the twain shall meet. But it does reflect that love and affection, and it is right. There's a lot going on in the world. Obviously, there are some very serious matters facing us. But when there is this level of agreement across the chamber that it is right to clarify and have this piece of legislation, and that frustration and disappointment that, frankly, having done all the work and looked at the law and found a way through all the challenges that people have identified, the legislation was dropped. I really hope the Minister will recognise there is full support in this House just getting this done, getting that protection there, and helping make sure that the 54% of us who have a pet can take them out to the park, try and shut our doors to stop our cats from leaving our houses and becoming the 6 dinner SIDS, but generally be confident that our pet welfare is one of the best things that we can look forward to.
Yeah. Jane Stevenson.
Mr Deputy Speaker, and it's lovely to see an animal lover in the chair for this important debate on pet abduction. I firstly want to commend my honourable friend, the member for Southend, for bringing this bill. It is one that she and I have campaigned to see brought forward for some time now, and I think it is so important to so many of our constituents. Everywhere in Wolverhampton North East, I meet people who campaign on behalf of pets, who are proud pet lovers, and those fantastic volunteers that I meet. The Ashmore Rescue for Cats I met a few weeks ago. They do such amazing work, and their volunteers give up so much time to protect and rescue local cats. I've also met local cat protection officers and volunteers in Wolverhampton. All of them have pushed for this bill, and I'm very proud to mention them in the chamber today. I'm also, it would be remiss not to mention Sir David Amos, her predecessor, who is much missed today, and I share with her that pride of being a new patron of the Conservative Animal Welfare Foundation. So I look forward to pushing for other animal causes with her going forward. The value of our pets to us is why this bill is so important. The Honourable Lady for Walthamstow has mentioned her ageing cat, who may not be in the prime of her years at this point. My 2 Cavalier Spaniels, Cromwell and Bertie, are about to be 12. They have very few teeth left. They look a bit ragged round the edges, but to me they are the most valuable thing in my household, in my possession. And if someone stole my dogs, they would face little or no punishment because their financial value is nothing. If anything, they're a liability because of ever-growing vets' bills and endless treatments that they need. They have no financial value. But this new bill will reflect the distress that I and my family would feel, and certainly my 2 dogs would feel if they were to be abducted. I will also interject that our fantastic whips department aren't able to speak, but I did mention to my honourable friend, the member for Stourbridge, that Sydney Pickles, her dog, is also in strong support of this bill. So it's good to put Sydney's support on record, even though my honourable friend isn't currently in her place. I think the whole House can unite around this important piece of new legislation. The points that I mentioned in my intervention around ownership and proof when this bill, I'm pleased it's future-proof, I'm pleased it is applicable to a variety of pets, because I think it is very difficult to set a dividing line of what pet has a value, what pet is just a standard extra piece of fur that you buy at the pet shop. To all of us, whatever type of pet, it is important and it has that emotional value. And to children in families, learning how to care for pets, I think, is an important part of growing up and learning responsibility and compassion for other people as well as animals. So I won't talk at length today. I hope she'll forgive me because I'm being sponsored by Tissues and Lemsip today, but I didn't want to return to my constituency without showing my full support to her. It is unusual to get volunteers to sit on bill committees, but she knows that I am very happy to support her in this in any way I can, and I can see the Honourable Member for South Swindon is also indicating this is going to be one of those bills. It won't be difficult to put together a bill committee. I know people on both sides of the chamber care passionately about animals, and I would just briefly say to the Minister, it would be good to hear where the government stands on that ownership issue if this bill does widen to other breeds of animal. And if there aren't enough distinguishing features of guinea pigs or hamsters or whatever, we eventually, ferrets has been mentioned a fair few times, but just that proof of ownership point I think is important if we want this bill to do what it says on the tin. But on behalf of all animals, I want to lay on record my sincere thanks to government. We've had meetings about this over many months and many years, and it is fantastic to see government supporting this bill, and I wish my honourable friend every success. Thank you.
Oliver Hill.
Mr Deputy Speaker, can I start by congratulating my honourable friend for Southend on securing this second reading for her bill. It's a very important moment, I believe. I'm also somebody who came second in Dog of the Year. Not this year, but I was the best in the East with my dog Soda, who was a lovely cross British Schnauzer. But anyway, enough of that. I do remember friends having the dreadful experience of having their dog snatched, a lovely Norfolk terrier, a bit of a character. And it was a peculiar incident in a way, because the dog just suddenly yelped and disappeared. And then the friends put up an advertisement offering a reward. And some rather dodgy individual then rang up and said, well, if the reward was a bit bigger, you know. And eventually the dog was returned. But I mean, it gives you an example of some of the terrible behaviour. And of course, what a dreadful experience for the family, where this dog was much loved. And eventually, though, the dog was returned, although a very sad experience for the family. But I believe that, as I think my right honourable friend for Swindon South alluded to, that there has been a gap between how the law views and values animals and how the public do. And I do believe that a series of private members' bills have started to change this and to build on the work of the landmark Animal Welfare Act of 2006. And when I was taking through the Animal Welfare Service Animals Act in 2019, known at the time as Finn's Law, members in all parts of the House and the public were shocked when I explained that the only effective charge when a police dog was stabbed to within an inch of his life by an escaping criminal was criminal damage, and that no penalty was actually imposed in that case because the police dog was nearing the end of his working life and wasn't worth much money. And so the sentencing was based entirely on the monetary value of the damage. And I was glad to gain strong all-party support through various members, but also the Right Honourable Member for Exeter, who had originally taken through the 2006 Act. We did manage, through that private members' bill, to provide an alternative approach enabling an Animal Welfare Act offence to be used in those sorts of cases. And my honourable friend for West Dorset followed up the following year with the Animal Welfare Sentencing Act, which raised the maximum sentences for animal welfare offences to 5 years imprisonment. And I believe that this bill is in the same tradition, because pet theft is just theft, a criminal offence under the Theft Act. Conviction can result in a fine or a maximum sentence of 7 years, as my right honourable friend said. But the guidelines don't really reflect that, because harm is assessed by reference to the financial loss which results from the theft. So pet theft is seen as a minor crime. Low prosecution rates, relatively lenient sentences, but it ignores the true nature of the crime, which is that pets are loved in their families, they're members of the family, it's often said they complete the family, and when they're taken it causes huge suffering to the family and, of course, the animal companion who loves his family or her family. So this is a much more substantial crime than the current law allows. There is a body called the Stolen and Missing Pet Alliance, and they campaign for stronger penalties. And they say pets are classified as property, second-hand goods valued under £500. The punishment is usually a measly £250 fine if the thief is caught. Now, pet theft has been a low-risk, high-reward crime, a gift for dog thieves. And so I welcome the specific crime of pet abduction in the bill, with a proper sentence attached. I think a new specific offence will also give courts access to appropriate custodial sentences, because the guidance, the sentencing guidance, will have to reflect the new offence and its wider ambit in terms of considering sentience. The new offence is right, and it shows that pets are more than just mere replaceable property, sentient beings, and I think also to reflect the worry caused by the uncertainty to the family of the animal's well-being. So I think this would be another animal welfare measure, recognising animals as more than mere property, and another successful private members' bill changing law in this area. And I'd also like to say that I think I've certainly had a lot of help from the clerks and the whibs, and I hope that the same will be true, and I'm sure it will be for my honourable friend. I think we should also recognise that organised crime gangs have been stealing dogs to breed from, so there's a need to ensure that we're not allowing organised crime to fund its activities in this way. And I think the difficulties in monitoring and tracking the criminals has been partly to do with police records, and I think having a specific offence will mean that we will know where these offences occur and be able to track patterns, which is so important if you're trying to really stop a crime. So I think the Pet Theft Task Force, which was started by my right honourable friend, was a very, very good idea. And I think its recommendation of finding better recording options was something that we would all probably support. I think the only sort of evidence I've seen, apart from the evidence from my honourable friend for Southend West, is the Pet Task Force did try to get a handle on whether the number of offences was increasing or not, and they found that there had been a 3.5% increase in recorded cases at a time when theft cases generally had gone down by a quarter. So, you know, we had a period of declining theft, but not in this area, going up. Now, of course, these figures, as have been said, are based on an incomplete set of records, and so it's not conclusive. But I think it would fit in with the impression that most of us have, that this is a crime that's on the up rather than on the down, and therefore this is particularly welcome. So I'm not going to detain the House for too long, because I've got a bill coming up later. But I do think this is an opportunity to improve the welfare of animals, show public abhorrence of the crime of abducting a much-loved pet and family member, and also to bear down on organised crime. So I'm happy to support.
James Daly.
Thank you very much indeed, Sir Roger. And I have to say this now, having listened to the other contributions, that as I walk into my front room, there is a picture on the front room, and it has me sat with my dog Bertie with his rosette, and Bertie came third in the Dog of the Year this year. But I have to say, although the member for Castle Point is not in her place, even I have to accept that her dog was robbed, because that dog is one of the most talented animals I have ever seen in my life, and how they didn't get in the top 3, I do not know, but that is a different story completely. I wish to rise in support of this bill for all of the reasons that has been said. I am always concerned. I'm a member of the Home Affairs Committee, Justice Select Committee. I've been a criminal lawyer for the best part of 2 decades. I'm always interested in how we encourage the police to take seriously all types of offending, and certainly offending in this area. And I do think that it is, as the Honourable Lady's pointed out across there, it is a strong statement from Parliament, and I genuinely hope that the police will take up that challenge of investigating these offences properly and giving them the degree of time and seriousness that they deserve. I hope my friend from Southend West will forgive me in respect of this, but I think that when we talk about general animal welfare legislation, I'm going to touch, and I hope this is appropriate, on my private member's bill, which is number 7 in the list, and it's only for this reason, because of its relationship to what we have here. What this bill is talking about, and what very articulately and very movingly we've been talking about, is the impact on a loss of a cat or a dog to the owner. Now, that is not always the situation when somebody loses a cat, in particular, is sadly not always when it's alive. Sometimes it is when it has passed. And there are many occasions, and there are Gizmo's Law within my constituency, which is a nationwide campaign, which is one of the bases of my private member's bill, highlights this, that if a cat is found deceased on the public highway or is picked up by a local authority, it is almost certainly disposed of in landfill. There is no care or thought that is given to the owner of that cat who does not know where it is. So Gizmo's Law, which is number 7, and I bring this to the Minister's attention as to whether this is a complementary piece of legislation, is requiring without cost, apart from some time, that if that situation is the case and a cat is found by a local authority in those circumstances, that the microchip be scanned, and legislation is going through now in respect of mandatory microchipping of cats, and that efforts be made through various websites, or the details hopefully that will come from the microchip, to tell the owner of the cat what has happened, because the loss of the cat, not only through theft but through tragic circumstances like that, I think are really important, and I think are really complementary and are really part of this debate as to how we treat our pets. Now, the other part of my bill, which again I think is part of the nuanced circumstances that we find ourselves in terms of how we treat our animals and dogs in this case, and I simply could not believe that this was the case when I was told Tuck's Law is a campaign run from the constituency of my honourable friend for Castle Point, and Stu and Dawn have worked over many years to do this. But there are circumstances, sadly it is reducing, but there are circumstances where individuals take healthy dogs into vets, and veterinary surgeons will euthanise that dog. So there is no explanation that needs to be given. There is no requirement in those circumstances upon the veterinary profession to either scan the microchip or make any inquiries to say whether it's the rescue backup, so the rescue backup being the original breeder or someone other than the owner. So we have the extraordinary situation which could fall within the circumstances that we've said, that say a dog, for perhaps a whole variety of reasons, perhaps is proving to be, is perhaps barking, and a neighbour decides I'm going to take that dog, take it to the vet and ask for it to be put down. And genuinely, that happens now. That happens, and it has been an ongoing discussion. I've been talking about this for 3 or 4 years since I'm in the House. There is a a voluntary code of conduct that the veterinary profession has put in place, but it's not stopping this from happening. So you can see that in those circumstances, that could fall within the legislation that we are talking about here. So I would ask that the Minister give consideration to the widest possible scope and the widest possible that if we are going to introduce good legislation like this, it should cover all circumstances where members of the public can know what has happened to their pets and healthy dogs are protected. If I was to lose Bertie in any circumstances, it would just be the end of the world, whatever those circumstances. And if he was in an accident, that would impact myself and my family just as much as if he was stolen. And I hope that perhaps the Minister will give some consideration to Pets Microchips Bill number 7, which we're not going to speak about today, as perhaps a complementary piece of legislation to address many of the issues that we've been talking about here today. Thank you.
Joe Gideon.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Today I'm here to support this incredibly important bill brought forward by my honourable friend, the member for Southend West, the Pet Abduction Bill. By passing this legislation, we will take action to address the growing problem of pet theft and recognise it as a specific offence. In doing so, we are honouring an important part of DEFRA's action plan for animal welfare and delivering a measure which will have a huge impact on our constituents. For my family, as for many, pets are family members, and the thought of having them stolen is incredibly distressing. Liesl von Cat and Cavalier Spaniels Horatio and Arthur are truly family members, although Horatio and Arthur live in Spain, so I'm not sure that they will be afforded the same protections as we are hoping to deliver through this bill. Pets provide a lifeline, a source of companionship and a comfort in good times and bad. I know many of my right honourable and honourable friends around the chamber feel exactly the same way about their own cats and dogs, and we've heard a lot of stories already today. Unfortunately, I don't have a dog, so I didn't enter the Westminster Dog of the Year award. Otherwise, I'm sure I would have won with whatever. No, seriously not. I've had reports of dogs being stolen from gardens in Stoke-on-Trent Central, vanishing after being let out in the evening. Thanks to the support of amazing charities like Beauty's Legacy, who work to reunite lost and stolen pets with their owners, and Staffordshire Police Service tracking down dogs, there have been local success stories with perpetrators being arrested. Yet at present, the theft of a treasured family pet is no more serious under the law than the theft of a phone or wallet. They are currently treated as mere replaceable property, akin to the loss of an inanimate object. This is not just an oversight, but an insult, failing to acknowledge the emotional trauma experienced by victims of pet abduction. Currently, there is little under the law to deter criminals, who seek to profit from the sale of stolen pets or use them as leverage in personal disputes. The penalties for pet theft are often minimal and do not reflect the severity of emotional turmoil inflicted on the pet and its family. And this really does need to change, and this bill we are discussing today seeks to address this. By making pet abduction a specific offence, we are sending a clear message that our society values the unique role pets play in our lives. It will provide a deterrent to those who might consider pet abduction a low-risk, high-reward crime. Indeed, by imposing stiffer penalties, we can dissuade potential offenders and protect our beloved animals. This is not just about punishment, but about prevention and protection. We must also address the important role this legislation will play in enabling better tracking and data collection on pet abduction cases. This will provide us with insights into the scale of the problem and help tailor future preventative measures. Data is power, and in this case, it is the power to protect our furry friends. We are a nation of animal lovers, and by passing this important bill, we can continue this proud tradition. We will honour our government's commitments and set an example of how we treat our animals. Finally, I'd like to commend my honourable friend for Southend West for bringing forward this bill. As a successor to Sir David Amis, she constantly strives to continue his legacy as a champion for animal welfare and propose important measures to improve the lives of our animals. I know members from across the political divide will support this legislation. Animal welfare unites our parties, and together we can send a clear message that pet abduction will not be tolerated and that pets are really worth far more than mere personal property.
Dr. Thérèse Coffey.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It's a pleasure to speak in this debate today. Frankly, people who steal, abduct pets are despicable, and I'm delighted that by this legislation, which my honourable friend, member for Southend West, has taken up today with the support of the government, will make it far more straightforward to put people who do that in jail, because that is what they deserve. I do commend my honourable friend on the good fortune in her place in the ballot and her wisdom to choose this particular piece of legislation. And she will know that this was originally in the Kept Animals Bill, and I'm delighted that she and the government are honouring the commitment that was made in order to make sure that we took through those elements through legislation. And I'm confident that this legislation will fly through, and although I'm sure that the government and she will be listening to some of the points that are made on some of the finer points. I think also in that time, while the Kept Animals Bill was paused, also there was a significant public outcry on what to do about cats. And as my honourable friend articulately put in her opening speech, there is a slight difference in some of the nature of the pets in their own natural instinctive attributes. And I'm delighted that government lawyers, DEFRA officials, have worked hard in order to establish how cats can be well included in this particular bill. Now, this does go back to, as my honourable friend, right honourable friend, was referring to, is about the task force that was there. And people may not realise that the theft, to be convicted of theft, it actually is quite a high bar to show how you would permanently deprive of a particular item. And especially that would be true, in effect, of a living item. And I'm pleased, though, that by taking this forward, by using pet abduction and having that potential criminal offence of imprisonment for up to 5 years, I think will provide an effective deterrent. And the reason I say that, I know there's been a number of different discussions about various police forces. I want to commend Suffolk Police, because there has been a significant increase in pet thefts in the last few years as people seek to steal a much valued pet, but which can also be sold. And my honourable member from North East Hertfordshire is not quite in his place at the moment, but I'm sure he'll be back. He is right to say about how the impact of organised crime, or indeed perhaps not on the scale of a national organised crime, but certainly local crime gangs are taking this, but then transporting those pets right around the country. And again, I want to pay some tribute to Sussex Police, who found Willow, a dog that had been stolen in Suffolk and was found 8 months later, thanks to their activities, and it was actually found in Surrey. and that pet was able to be reunited with her owner. So in terms of, I know that people have talked about the Westminster Dog Show and others. I have to say, my beloved Rizzo, I think just for perseverance, and she was old and blind, she finally got a highly commended award in the Westminster Dog Show of the Year a few years ago, and then sadly passed away not that long after. But we do know, and that's why we are here, it's why I know the British people care extensively about the value of their pets. And I think it's why it's also wise in this legislation to add a power that can, by regulations, as in the future, to react to what is happening with criminal gangs in particular, that there's the opportunity to have more pets later, which may need further consideration of some of the precise detail of the issues that have already been raised by members in this debate. In terms of one of the things that it particularly refers to, and I'm glad this consideration has been given, I recall a stray dog in the village where I used to live in Hampshire, was just wandering around. We took the dog in. Like a responsible person, I wanted to find out where this dog had come from. The initial inquiry in the village shop didn't know, and then I went to the vet. Now, I was a bit surprised, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that the vet said they were not allowed to tell me of the pet owner, and I understand that in the wider sense, but I found it rather frustrating that I was limited in how I could connect to the owner, to reunite the owner, and wasn't even allowed to be told whether or not the dog was registered to somebody in my village. And so when the officer from the council came, they took the dog. I wish I had known the full details of Section 150 of the Environmental Protection Act 1990, where I could have kept the dog, but I was told at the time absolutely not. And I was concerned, of course, that if the owner was not found, that after 7 days the dog could be euthanised. And I had felt that I could have probably have had more effort. So in that regard, I have to say my behaviour would have been, although now having read the legislation in detail, now I'm a Member of Parliament, I would probably wanted to hold on to the dog for perhaps 24 hours, just to take it to the pub that night or whatever it was. And it turns out somebody in the pub that night had lost their dog, and I was able to refer them, and they were able to be reunited the following morning. But so I'm grateful that the legislation considers the genuine kindness of people who want to try and reunite the dogs with their owners, and to be able to do that. In terms of, I have to say there is one amendment I'm giving notice to the honourable member. She knows about this already, and to the government. I do want to change commencement date, and it's clause 6, subsection 1. And at the moment, it's relying on more regulations to come through to bring this bill into effect. Now, I understand officials might want some time to get guidance and some other stuff like that. I just don't think that's necessary. I strongly recommend that the member in charge of the bill do try and change that through committee stage. I don't want to have to wait to report stage to change it, and that some deal is done, whether it's 2 months, 3 months. I think that's perfectly reasonable in order to make sure that this does become law, so that when we pass the Act ultimately, and I hope that we don't need to see, we'll talk to this later at report stage, I hope there won't be many amendments to this bill and the Lords pass it through, so that, but that I will.
Robert Buckland. To my right honourable friend for raising that issue. Of course, the normal convention is that royal assent means that the bill would come into force 2 months afterwards in terms of its provisions. So that's a fairly reasonable period of time. It may well be just to delete that clause or put something in just to allow a slightly longer period. But I think she makes a powerful point.
My right honourable and learned friend is well established in the operation of the law. Indeed, having been, I think, a recorder in the past and similar, and of course his time as Attorney General. So yes, I would agree. Look, why don't we make it 2 months after the bill? So with that, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I strongly support this. This is I appreciate there've been lots of private members' bills where people have latched onto an issue and it hasn't really changed the law. And I think that was where some of the questions that may have been coming today. No doubt, by changing this, as the task force put in place, the idea of abduction being in effect a way to change the permanent deprivation That makes this really powerful legislation, and I look forward to it becoming law before the summer.
George Freeman.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. It's a great pleasure to be able to speak in this debate, and could I just pay tribute also to your long-standing work on animal welfare issues in this House over the years. And I'll be brief because I know there are a number of very good private members' bills that are wanting to get heard today. But I wanted to speak on behalf of the people of Mid-Norfolk, but also, if I may, on behalf of Tosca, our 14-year-old cat, and Jassy, our 2-year-old fox-red Labrador. The pets of this country need us to act on their behalf, just like there's many others in this country who, in a civilised society, need parliamentarians to speak for them. The children who can't vote, and all of those who need us to take their interests seriously. And it's a joy to have got their name on the order paper, on the official record as well. But more importantly, for all those who've suffered the appalling trauma of pet abduction. And it is not a victimless crime, and for many, many people in this country, the abduction or theft of their pet is every bit as serious, if not more serious and traumatic than the loss of a wallet or the loss of things that the police more generally think of as more serious crimes. And I want to pay tribute to my great friend, the Honourable Member for Southend West, who has brought this to the House and secured government support. And I pay tribute and thank the Minister on the front bench for her support for this. This is enlightened government working with backbenchers across the House to put in place really good legislation that the people of this country want, and in the spirit of our late great friend, the Honourable former member for Southend West, the late David Amis, whose shield stands proudly behind the current sitting member. He would have been absolutely to the fore on this, and he was a great champion, as she is, for this whole question of pets and animal welfare. I wanted also to mention particularly a very, very dear friend of mine. I won't give her surname, but Marika, who had a beautiful miniature pinscher, about the smallest dog it's possible to take on Hampstead Heath. And he became lost in the undergrowth, and somebody found him, and rather strangely, rather than take this tiny little dog, a puppy, to somebody, or look around for the person who'd obviously lost it, he decided in his haste to tie this puppy with a piece of string to a railing and abandon it. And when Marika subsequently, after an hour of searching, was reported that this dog had been seen tied to a railing, she rushed to the railing to find the dog stolen. And 24 hours later, the body of the puppy was found just off the North Circular. And the trauma, it's ongoing. 5 years later, she'll be distressed to be reminded of it, but I know she wants me to raise this, and she's raised it with her local MP, and she's delighted that this bill has made it to the House and that the government is supporting it. And I, Mr Speaker, conscious of time, I won't rehearse the excellent arguments that have been made about the legalities of this. I just simply wanted to do two things. Firstly, take this opportunity to remind those listening, and invite the Minister to remind those listening, that there is actually in, I think, I defer to my right honourable friend, the former Lord Chancellor, Attorney General, for, I think in the 1990 Environmental Protection Act, there is a very clear law that anyone who finds a dog has a duty in law to make sure that it is a stray dog, that it is returned to somebody in office or to the police. And the person who decided they were too busy to take Marika's dog to the park wardens at Hampstead Heath or to anybody, but to tie it up and abandon it, actually committed an offence. And it's really important that people understand we all, as citizens, have a duty to dogs. And this bill today, I think, strengthens that obligation, as well as the criminal sanctions against those who don't exercise their responsibilities and exercise this appalling crime on behalf against pets, but every bit as appallingly against the people who love their pets and suffer the trauma. I wanted briefly, Mr Deputy Speaker, to highlight in Mid-Norfolk some really excellent work going on, and some of the terrible stories that I've seen in my work. That the Cat Protection League in Longham, and I see the honourable member for Cambridge on the opposition front bench, is a former candidate in mid-Norfolk. He will know well the Cat Protection League in Longham, and they do brilliant work on rehoming and on microchipping, and I'm really delighted to see the extension of the microchipping framework in this bill. I want to highlight Dog Lost in Norfolk and Suffolk, who do great work, and I know my right honourable friend, the member for Suffolk Coastal, supports them. They have 25,000 members, which speaks to the importance of this issue across our part of the world and across the country. And personally, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I wanted to highlight Alex Dan of Dan's Ice Cream in North Tuddenham, who had his dog Patch stolen from beside his van, beside his ice cream van. He hadn't lost him, he hadn't neglected him or left him. While he was serving customers ice cream, somebody stole his dog, and it was reported in the excellent Eastern Daily Press. And Rita and Philip Potter, who had their Labrador Daisy stolen. And I could go on, we could go on. This is not a victimless crime. It's a crime that causes huge trauma. And for those who rely on their pets, not just for the glories that pets bring to daily life, but there are many people who actually rely on their pets to help them with mental health conditions, to help them with loneliness, to help them with a whole raft of small c conditions that cause huge pain. Pets are doing a huge social service for us all. I'm not suggesting they should be brought under the provisions of the Department of Health and Social Care or funded for it, but I think we should at least acknowledge that they're doing hugely important and good work, which makes the crime of pet theft all the more appalling. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I won't indulge your or the House's patience any further, but I just want to put on record my support for this bill, for the honourable member, and my joy at seeing all parties in this House come together in support of something that I think the public will be delighted to see Parliament putting in place.
Front bench, Daniel Zeichner.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It's always a pleasure to follow the honourable member for Mid-Norfolk, and I start by congratulating the honourable lady on her success in the ballot and for taking this bill forward, and also her very comprehensive introduction. We've heard excellent speeches on both sides. I've thoroughly enjoyed the contributions from my honourable friends from Walthamstow and West Ham, and I listened closely to the right honourable member for South Swindon and commend him for his expertise and good work on this, and of course the member for my near neighbour, the honourable member for North East Herts, who isn't in his place at the moment, but I listened to him closely too. I'd also like to associate myself with her warm words about her predecessor and our former colleague, the late Sir David Amis. Sir David's office was close to mine over in 1 Parliament Street, and we often chatted in the lift, sometimes conspired together to try and expedite or improve legislation relating to animal welfare, and he remains very much missed. Indeed, I rather suspect Sir David would have approved even more if the Kept Animals Bill had been proceeded with. And a pleasure though it is once again to be debating with the Minister today, she will no doubt be expecting me to berate her for the delays, and I hope I will not disappoint. It was actually her former colleague at DEFRA, the Right Honourable Member for Banbury, now the Attorney General, who led for the government on that bill, and we spent many days in committee with, yes, amendments, suggestions, but also very strong support from these benches for what the government was trying to do, because we were addressing very real problems of the day: the suffering of primates, the worrying by dogs of farm animals, the puppy smuggling, the cruel mutilation such as ear and tail cropping, the pain of pet theft, all that and more, which sadly of course has continued every day since, almost 1,000 days that this government has allowed those abuses to continue. Now, if that rant sounds familiar, it's because I said the same when the legislation relating to the export of live animals was brought forward. And the same question arises, which I hope one day a minister will address. Why was the Kept Animals Bill pulled after all that work when it had such strong cross-party support? Why did a change in the ministerial team mean that Conservative manifesto promises were dumped time and time again? And yes, we understand that bits of the bill are being brought forward in dribs and drabs, but subject to all the uncertainties and vagaries of the private member bill process, and without the expert evidence sessions, they're helpfully informed discussions. Now, I don't expect to get an answer, but the question remains, and we will keep putting it, not least because of the strength of public feeling on these matters. I have to say, evidenced by the range of petitions that have been linked to the bill. Now, on the bill before us today, we welcome it, we support it, we will try to improve it, but we do want it done swiftly. We all know, as we've heard, that dog and cat abduction can happen for a range of reasons, including, as we've heard, resale, extortion, sadly, breeding and dog fighting. All, again, as we've heard, devastating for owners, causing distress and sometimes cruelty to the animals involved. And I'm grateful to Battersea for sharing their thoughts with us ahead of this debate. Data analysis from Scotland found that in 32% of instances of dog theft investigated from 2019-20 and 2020-21, the offence was related to domestic issues or ownership disputes regarding the dog. This shows how complex dog and cat abduction is and how far the crime is tied to deliberately creating distress for the human victim. Dogs and cats are now sentient beings under law, and owners view their dogs and cats, again as we've heard, as part of the family. But if a pet is stolen, the offence is treated akin to stealing an inanimate object. Currently, sentencing can take the emotional impact on the human victim into account, but the dog or cat's financial worth, as again we've heard, plays the biggest factor, meaning that the punishment does not come close to fitting the crime or acting as a deterrent. Now, on this side of the House, we've been seeking action on this for a long time. Indeed, before the Kept Animals Bill, on June 22nd, 2021, some 32 months ago, my Labour colleagues moved amendments to the police crime sentencing and court bills to tackle pet theft. And I urge interested members to look up the very good discussion that took place. But the government batted away our efforts, and it took until the penultimate days of the committee stage of the Kept Animals Bill for the government to table what I have to say was a panicky, poorly drafted amendment which was discussed on November the 18th. And I again urge interested members to read the debate. Interestingly, that was after the Pet Theft Task Force had reported. Now, at that time, I expressed some surprise, as I put it, that pet theft had been smuggled in through the back door. But I and others all agreed that urgent action was needed. Indeed, the Minister herself said, and I quote, "This is being done quickly. I'm not apologising for that because I think the situation is one that we need to resolve quickly." Well, I agree. That was over 2 years ago. Actually, I have to say I find myself agreeing with her rather frequently these days. At that time, she was rather unkindly derided by Quentin Letts in a distinctly catty but quite funny column in The Times for being the Minister for Cats. Frankly, in her current role, she must often feel she's herding cats. But she was right then, it was urgent then, and it remains urgent now. Now, at the time, I argued that the government's formulation on connected persons and animals capable of forming bonds was problematic, and I suspect the Minister rather agreed. So I'm pleased that in the current bill before us we have a different form of words, and we've heard some discussion around that point. I would just say, however, I'm not sure this formulation is not without its own problems. Questions of ownership within households, again as has been initially explored today, is hard to define, and I suspect we'll wish to explore this further in committee. And to take one example, if Larry the Downing Street cat were to go AWOL, which I'm sure wouldn't happen under the current occupant, not sure about some of his predecessors, I wonder quite how the current wording would work. And I also have to wonder quite how the legislation will work when a much-loved cat is taken by an out-of-control pack of foxhounds, a situation that sadly still occurs, again to be explored further. And while I welcome the protection of cats within the bill and the regulations allowing the powers to extend the regulations to protect other species commonly kept as pets, there is an irony here, isn't there? Because the government appears to be creating a probably unintended route to protect those who keep primates as pets from the abduction of their animals, yet they're failing to ban the keeping of primates as pets as promised in the Conservative manifesto in 2019, something that was at least attempted in the Kept Animals Bill. So, Mr Deputy Speaker, I finish where I began. Labour strongly supports these measures to tackle pet theft, pet abduction. We will support the bill, but we want it strengthened and we want it done speedily.
Rebecca Park.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. And first of all, of course, I must congratulate my honourable friend, the member for Southend West, and thank her for bringing forward this incredibly important bill. And I think this really shows the best of us as parliamentarians when we can have a debate like this, and it brings us all together. It's something of a challenge on a Friday to see if we can get in as many pet names as possible, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I think we've excelled ourselves today with the naming of pets, including, of course, Granny Meow and her 14 cats that she looked after, and many mentions too of that wonderful event, Westminster Dog of the Year, which I've actually come second in a number of times, and it wasn't even with my own dog, Mr Deputy Speaker. I'm a bit of a fraud because I borrowed one from one of the amazing charities, but it was to help highlight this really, really great and useful event. And I also, of course, want to make my comments about the wonderful Sir David Ames, who did so much on animal welfare in this House, and I'm so pleased that that my honourable friend from Southend West is following in his footsteps. So this bill seeks to recognise the inherent difference between pets as sentient beings and as inanimate objects, and they would be seen under criminal law on theft. And I'm really proud to say that it was this government that introduced that Animal Welfare Sentience Act in 2022, which cemented the legal recognition that vertebrate animals are sentient beings. And the critical thing about this bill, of course, that it recognises that the sorts of pets we're talking about, stolen pets, are basically family, which is how I think my right honourable friend so ably put them. And all those emotions come into it surrounding our pets. I've got at the outset, of course, to pay tribute to all of those colleagues who took part today. It's been a tremendous debate, I think, showing so much knowledge and expertise and love of our pets. We've had cross-party support. We've had the Honourable Member from Walthamstow and from West Ham joining in. I thank them for their support on this, and also for the support of all our colleagues from South Swindon, who did such a great job on the Pet Fest task force, from Wolverhampton North East, who raised that issue of widening this to other animals in the future. She knows that's an option in this bill. North East Hertfordshire, with his great knowledge and expertise, because he took through Finn's Law, which we've heard about. Bury St Edmunds, and yes, I know he's got his pet microchips bill coming up, potentially following, but also just to say that the microchipping reform we plan to take forward will contribute to addressing the aims of the campaigns, some of the campaigns within his bill. I hope that gives some assurance. We've heard from the honourable friend from Stoke-on-Trent, and of course Suffolk Coastal, who herself did so much on animal welfare when she was Secretary of State in that department. And I think I should put on the record here, she raised the issue of commencing this as soon as possible. And just to say that this legislation will be commenced as soon as possible, indeed, within the 3 months from this bill receiving royal assent. So I hope that gives some assurances that the absolute intention to get speeding on with this. I just want to touch very, very quickly, as I don't have much time, but I just wanted to refer to the Kept Animals Bill, which, yes, I wasn't surprised that the Shadow Minister raised that, but it does give me the opportunity to talk about it. We're so aware of how important animal welfare is to the people in this nation, but also that's why it's such a priority for government. And it was a huge priority in our manifesto 2019, as he will know, and far from, whilst the Kept Animals Bill as such it isn't being taken forward, it is not a drip feed dribs and drabs dealing with items within that Kept Animals Bill. I would say it's been a wave of legislation that we have brought forward on animal welfare. Just a few. We've increased the penalties for those convicted of animal cruelty. We've announced the extension to the Ivory Act with more species added. We've passed that Animal Sentence Act. We've brought the Microchipping of Cats Act in, which I was here for on the one of the Friday sessions. Our action plan for animal welfare 2021. Banned glue traps, tackled hair coursing, we've banned the trade in shark fins, we've modernised licensing for dog breeding and pets, Finn's Law that I referred to before, and much, much more. So I genuinely think we are the party for animal welfare. And just to deal very quickly with this bill itself, obviously the unlawful taking of pets is a callous crime, and it's right that perpetrators are brought to justice. This bill focuses on the impact and welfare of stolen cats and dogs, not just their financial value. That's what's so important about it. I have to name my cats. Everybody else has named their pets, Mr Deputy Speaker. I've got to put Mr Raffer down on record and Mr Tips. And I just wanted to say, actually, we've had so many references to what pets mean to us, but since my husband died and since my 3 children left home, my cats have taken on an even more important role in my life. And, you know, they are there to welcome me when I get home. And we all have stories like that. In fact, we've heard a lot of them. And those are the things we can share. And that's why our pets are so important to us and why this bill is so important. I welcome the bill's intention to improve recording and monitoring of pet abduction offences. That's really, really important. And I must welcome that work of the Pet Theft Task Force, because so many of those recommendations are being taken up, including bringing in potentially the option of other animals if it's proven that that is the right thing to do. Another of the task force recommendations was strengthening the process of transfer of keepers recorded on a microchip record. We want all database operators to have robust processes in place to ensure that the existing keeper has a chance to object when someone else tries to change the keepership details contained on the microchip record. And this will ensure that stolen pets cannot simply be transferred to a new keeper. We've consulted on other changes to the microchipping regime that will make it easier for pets to be reunited with their keepers, and we will be publishing details of that very, very soon. And we've already announced the requirement for all owners of cats over 20 weeks to get their cats microchipped by the 10th of June 2024, so people do need to get a move on with that if they haven't managed to do that yet. So I think, Mr Deputy Speaker, there's a lot more I could say because there's so much in this bill, and there are more things that we are looking at as a government and as a department relating to this really, really important issue of animal welfare. But I hope I've demonstrated that we feel we're right behind this bill. We wish it well on its swift progress. I think you've got no shortage of people offering to be on the committee, so I think that's absolutely tremendous. And I'll reiterate again that once this becomes an act, it will be commenced within 3 months of royal assent, if not before, in England. So, Mr Deputy Speaker, I will leave that there. I know he too is a very ardent campaigner for welfare of animals, and I think on that happy note we can actually all join together and be very happy with our day's work. Thank you.
The Leader of the House, Anna Firth, to wind up.
With the Leader of the House, I want to thank all honourable members from both sides for coming to this debate today. I think we've had a fantastic debate. We have really all recognised the importance of animal welfare, not just to us, to our constituents, and I think the whole country. I must, of course, particularly thank the Shadow Minister, the Honourable Member for Cambridge, for his support, and as we've heard today, the support of the government and from the Minister, my right honourable friend for Taunton, Deane, and I'm particularly pleased to hear her comments about commencement. All 8 speeches have been fantastic. I've taken very detailed notes. I thank everybody for all their points, the legal points that were made, the information we've heard about the journey and the task force and the data, the other possibilities for strengthening the bill, all the wonderful stories about people's dogs and animals and possible loopholes. I really just want to finish by saying how grateful I am that we can use this to acknowledge the hard work of so many members over so many years. And I hope we can pass this legislation for our constituents who are animal lovers and show the nation that we value our animals. We will work together for the reputation of our nation as a world leader in animal welfare. I thank members.
The question is that the bill be now read a second time. As many of that opinion say aye? Aye. Contrary, no? The ayes have it.